As we said earlier, this is our special program on Trumpcare. Trumpcare is one of our points of focus this week. Maybe that's a better way to put it. And so let's be clear that we all understand what Trumpcare is. First of all, Trumpcare is the overarching name for the two competing bills that have been put forward, one in the House, one in the Senate. The House bill passed by 2 votes. As we've mentioned, the Senate bill is, it looks like as of this moment, as we record this, will not come up for a vote until after the recess. Now, however, there is a draft of that bill, and the 2 bills are far more alike than they are different. Now, the Republicans call these bills the American Health Care Act, AHCA. The rest of us call them Trumpcare for a variety of reasons, but I would say the primary reason is because it appears to irritate Donald Trump when we call it Trumpcare. So we, being mature, dispassionate analysts, say to that irritation of Donald Trump, Trumpcare, Trumpcare, Trumpcare. Okay, now, so Trumpcare is the Republican assault on health care. And of course, as we've said time and time again, and others have said time and time again, it's not really a health care bill at all. It's a tax cut disguised as a health care bill. So first of all, the best way, I think, to look at this, I remember when I was starting out in my career doing financial analysis and consulting work, economic work, benefits and insurance group for big corporations, the CEO of one of the largest corporations in America, who had a reputation as the meanest boss in America. In fact, I think he'd been on the cover of one of the business magazines with the headline, "The Meanest Boss in America," brought together his benefits group, and I was part of that group, and he started going on about, I want to do this to the health plan, and I want to do that to the health plan, and nobody understood what he was driving at. It seemed all very confusing, but all his own people, all his own staff, were too terrified to ask him what he was driving at. So as the outsider, I said, "Excuse me, sir, what are you trying to do with your employees here? What's your goal with your workers here?" And he looked at me and he said, "I want to give them less and make them think it's more." And I went, okay. And this is back in the era when we were seeing the rise of what was called cafeteria plans and the very complicated choices between PPO and HMO and pre-tax and after-tax and special health savings plans. It started to get insanely complicated. But I still think to this day that that CEO found the crux of corporate America's thinking about so many things, including healthcare, which is give us less and make us think it's more. Trump told us that his replacement for the Affordable Care Act would be wonderful, better, great. He told us that the Senate bill has got to have heart. He doesn't want it to be mean. He wants to give us less and make us think it's more. The Senate bill is trying to cover this with that and that with this. They want to give us less and make us think it's more. But you know what? I think people aren't buying it anymore. I don't think people are drinking the Republican Kool-Aid anymore. I think that's why so many Republican House members got hammered when they went out to their town halls during the last break. I think this is why I'm counting on you guys to hammer Senate members when they go into their break. This bill is going to be so devastating for so many people. If you are over 40, you're really going to be shafted by this bill, especially as you get into 50 and up with the so-called age tax, with the amount of insurance you're going to have to buy. Now, the analysis says that 22 million people will lose their health care under the Senate bill, but that doesn't count all the people who will have health insurance that just won't cover anything. We already have terrible health insurance in this country. It's not going to get any better under this bill. It's going to still be terrible. So let's talk about that for a second. One of the big problems with the Affordable Care Act, and you'll remember, I think President Obama was off base last January when he said the Affordable Care Act would have been more popular if Bernie Sanders supporters didn't dislike it. I think that's what Democrats always get this backwards. They come up with a policy that's imperfect, and then they blame the people who point out it's imperfect. Do you think that if Bernie Sanders supporters had kept their mouths shut, people would have been happy with the fact that their out-of-pocket costs for medical care are going up every year? You think people didn't know that their medical costs were going up every year? The Affordable Care Act is better than the horrible thing that is Trumpcare, but it is imperfect. Okay, I keep citing the statistic. An actuarial firm that works for corporations, Milliman, found that the average family of four with so-called good employer health insurance, PPO coverage, pays on average more than $10,000 a year, nearly $11,000 a year in out-of-pocket costs for their health care. You think that before Bernie Sanders supporters started to speak up, they thought the healthcare system was great? I can guarantee you, I talk to people all the time about the healthcare system. Nobody thinks it's great. It's not great. That's why we need Medicare for all. Health insurance, including the plans you buy on the exchanges, doesn't cover nearly enough. You can still be financially ruined by a medical catastrophe. Now, what will Trumpcare do? It will make that problem many times worse. People who are nearing or past the age of 60, but not yet 65, so they're not old enough for Medicare, they could pay 20% or more of their income, certainly is 16% and up, just on premiums before they even get to their out-of-pocket costs, and those out-of-pocket costs will go through the roof. So when everybody talks on the Democratic side about Trumpcare throwing $22 million off the insurance rolls, yeah, that's horrible. But they're not even talking about the fact that tens of millions of other people, perhaps 100 million people, won't get all the health care they need. Now, we've already talked a little bit about Medicaid cuts. They say that will deprive 14 million people of coverage over a 10-year period. And there, too, we may see cuts in benefits as well as cuts in overall coverage. So we're really seeing something monstrous in motion with this Trumpcare bill. That gets us to the whole notion of the resistance in general and Trumpcare in particular. How do you resist a monstrosity like Trumpcare? Well, number one, you want to make sure people are out there fighting against it. And that's why the Indivisible group has been so successful in turning people out to those congressional town halls. We need to keep up that kind of activism for sure. Now, we have great recruitment efforts going to make sure that people go out there and demonstrate. But you know what would really jumpstart those recruitment efforts? If the Democratic Party took an official position that it believes in government-run, single-payer, Medicare for all, whatever you want to call it, government-run health insurance for every single citizen of the United States, that everyone in the United States should have health care as a human right with decent benefits that will make sure they're treated when they get sick. One of the things we got to do in this country, and that includes Democrats, is stop talking about health insurance and health care as if they're the same thing, as we already know under the current system, and we will know even more if Trumpcare passes. You can have insurance on paper but not be able to afford health care. So don't confuse health insurance and health care. We need a Democratic Party specifically that says every single human being in this country has a right to health care, not health insurance, but health care as a human right. We need to provide that the most effective way possible through the government. We need to join the community of developed nations in providing health care through the government. We are the only developed nation that does not do it for quirky historical reasons I won't bother going into. So we need health care for all. We need Medicare for all, single payer. We'll come up with a good name eventually. But whatever it is, we need it now. Now, I would argue that that is the best way to oppose Trumpcare. Best way to oppose Trumpcare is to say Vote for us. We're the party who'll make sure you get you and your kid and your parents and the people you care about and love will get medical care when they are ill, when they are injured. We are the ones who will say that that is our goal. That is what we believe, not just as a matter of policy, but as a matter of basic human values, that we believe everyone should get the medical care they need. Now, Obama and some of the other people who were the architects of the Affordable Care Act are understandably defensive when their work is criticized, but I would argue that if the Democrats had begun by making a forceful case for Medicare for All in 2009 and forced the Republicans to back them down into what was in many ways a conservative and Republican idea to begin with in the Affordable Care Act, the Democrats would be in a lot better political position than they are today because the flaws in the Affordable Care Act could be attributed to Republicans and not to them. People hate this healthcare system, and they hate it for a very good reason. We've been talking a lot about the out-of-pocket costs up to now, but have you tried to read and understand a healthcare claim and an explanation of benefits from your insurance company? It's like gambling. It's like throwing pennies down a well and wondering if you're going to hear a splash or not. We go to the doctor. We're told that the doctor gives us a bill for $140, or they send the bill to the insurance company. Maybe they pay it all. Maybe they pay none of it. Maybe they pay $20. Maybe they pay $50. You just don't know. And they want you not to know. It's a game to keep you off balance, to keep you off your feet. That is our healthcare system. It is, in fact, an abusive relationship between the insurance company and the individual. We need to stop being abused by our insurance companies. We need to stand up and say to the insurance companies, profit has no place in health insurance. You have no place in health insurance. You, to use the terminology of our current president, are fired. That's what we need to say to the insurance companies. You need to get out of the people's business, and keeping people alive and healthy is the people's business. Now, if Democrats stand for that, and if they say, here's what we need to do to get there, and let's talk about that for a second. To get to the health care system we deserve, first of all, we have to prevent Trumpcare from passing, because it not only guts the Affordable Care Act, it guts what came before it, Medicaid and Medicare, okay? So we need to stop that, number one. Number two, we need to start expanding Medicare so that it is available to more groups of people, children, people over 55, and so on. We need to look at ways and strategies for making Medicare universal and available to everyone. In Australia, by the way, the system of universal government health care they have there is just called Medicare. That's it. Everybody is on Medicare in Australia. Maybe that's what we ought to call it, just Medicare, because Medicare works and people like it. So with that said, we need to start building in that direction. Now, I will also add that there is a corner of the liberal pundit world that says, oh, you can't really do Medicare for all in this country. It's impossible. Well, since when have Americans been known for their can't-do spirit? Since when has the United States of America been a country that looks at a problem and says, too complicated, we can't pull it off? Trust me, every other country in the developed world has pulled it off. We can do it. Now, we've dug ourselves a lot deeper into a hole than any of those countries did. Granted, it's going to be an enormous project, granted, bigger than any of them have ever faced. But if there's one thing we've prided ourselves on as a country, it's that we do bigger, we do bold. It's something we've always been able to do. When John Kennedy said in 1961 that this country will land, he said a man, because these were different times, a man on the moon and bring him back safely within 10 years, that was as big a challenge as Medicare for all. If we could do it then, we can do it now. If we could do the Roosevelt program in the 1930s, if we could do Social Security, if we could do Medicare for seniors, we can do Medicare for all. It's time. That should be the Democratic party mantra, and it should be and will be the best way to resist Trump and the Republicans